Logan is my favourite superhero movie, if you want to count it as that, because it does basically just transcend the genre as a whole. It is a great movie in pretty much any sense of the word, and I think it's near enough flawless in its execution. There were so many ingredients to cooking this masterpiece up, and what made it work. One of these things being that this was Hugh Jackman's final performance as the character he has now been playing for 24 years. Hugh Jackman's Wolverine quickly took the lead of the entire X-Men franchise, with it often feeling like they weren't sure what to do without him. He grew as a character, and Jackman's performance was more mesmerizing in every movie, and he's one of those casting where he is the character. Just as much as Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Charlie Cox as Daredevil, Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, he is just that level of casting. And I know that's big for some people because he's not the most comic accurate portrayal of a character, but from the get-go, this was clearly a very different take on the character of the Wolverine, and now, after so long, and having Hugh Jackman's unique take and variation on the character, we are getting a more comic-accurate version with him. But anyway, so by the time we got to the announcement and revelation that Logan was going to be his last film, with the amount of audiences that were attached to this specific portrayal of the character, of course, it was going to be a big movie. And the thing was as well, Wolverine of course has always in the comics been quite a brutal character, especially in the Old Man Logan comic, which this film claimed to be based on.
I've got 3 words for you guys. Old Man Logan, that's all I'm saying.
And even though the actual only similarity between the source material and this film is the fact that Logan is old, part of the reason people were so excited for this movie was we're finally going to get to see like a prime Wolverine, even though he's old and dying. Like in terms of action and visually and the graphic element, we're finally going to see that unleashed. With the X-Men movies, they were always a 12, so seeing this guy with claws and like ripping into people, but then there's no blood on the claws and nothing like that, it's never felt like it reached its full potential. So with the upcoming Logan movie announced to be R-rated or a 15 in the UK, because we can fucking handle it, this felt like a bit of a make or break movie. If this movie was bad, I think it had the potential to kill the entire franchise. In a way, it kind of did, actually, because there was no chance anything after this could live up to that. They took a big swing after the comfort of Deadpool being a success and that being R-rated. They took a big swing, and they fucking nailed it. Now if we go back real quick, 24 years ago now, we met Logan for the first time post-adamantium procedure with no real idea of who he is, what's happened to him, so now starting his new life where he is brought into the fold of the X-Men and was able to find parts of himself and grew across all those years that passed. Now we find him at the end of his life. The opening of the movie establishes everything so well. The first spoken line being "fuck" immediately says to the audience that we're going to be seeing the rawest version of the character yet. We see him literally drag himself out to confront these guys trying to take his car and just get shot down immediately. And that's where we get the title of the film, and I really like that that's when the title shows up, as Logan is struggling after just being shot and lay on the floor. He would rather take bullets to his own chest than allow them to damage his limo, and after this happens, and he gets continuously beaten down, we get that berserker rage that again showcases the blood and the violence that we've been waiting 17 years to see. The Wolverine is finally unleashed, and it's shot and lit exceptionally well. Something I really took note of this time around is the amount of gorgeous shots throughout the film. It's genuinely a great looking movie. I never thought it was bad looking, but I just took extra note of the amount of shots that I'd love on my desktop wallpaper. From the effects to the colour grading, to the composition, it's leagues above all the films around it. And the world building in this film is incredibly effective and allows the film to truly have its own identity, not being dragged down by the lore and backstory of the rest of the franchise. This is a world that is a real sad idea of where this universe could end up. I actually think it follows on from Days of Future Past really well with how That film showcased another apocalyptic dystopia, then ending in a much lighter way with all the originals back, and that's the last time we see them because obviously all the other X-Men movies that came after this were set beforehand. And so Logan is set in the year of 2029, after Days of Future Past was set in 2023. We see how the world almost feels like it's gone backwards. After such a hopeful ending, we're now in a bit of a dystopia that is more Western as opposed to sci-fi. Mutants have apparently been near enough extinct for a while now and are just as hated and judged on as ever. But we also find that Logan and Charles had something to do directly with the loss of the other X-Men. Something took place that truly haunts them both, and we never really find out what it is exactly, and that's absolutely the most effective way. Again, it allows it to be its own movie and breathe on its own, and it's more effective for us having the last time we saw these characters being in that hopeful state and then knowing that somehow, somewhere that goes wrong. It just saves this film from cramming extra stuff in and allows it to be as character driven as it wants. And I think what makes this dystopian future so effective is how similar it does feel to the real world. We see through the characters the true devastating effects, and then it's just the little details that really enhance the experience, such as the antagonist with enhanced robotic elements. It's not a big plot point or a big thing, it's just casual. The massive farming machinery, the transport, and then the true loneliness of Logan, Charles, and Caliban. After losing those closest to them, as well as now pretty much their entire race, they've lost the fight that they've spent decades fighting for. The abandoned tank that Charles stays in is such a beautiful sight, and it really feels like a representation of Charles's mind. Overwhelmed with darkness, but there is still light coming through, however brief, however small. Even if it's sparingly, there is still light there. And it's a true sad sight to see where Charles is in the film as well. I love Logan's first interaction with him. And then we have Charles saying that Logan's going to be the person to put him to sleep, which is a sad thought that Charles just feels that, but also a nice little bit of foreshadowing. And there's a great sense that Charles doesn't forgive Logan for whatever happened in the past. He also accuses Logan of waiting for him to die, which I think isn't exactly wrong. Logan knows his time is closing in, he knows the adamantium in his body is poisoning him, and I think there's a sense of just not wanting to die alone. But there is also that heart, spending his last moments to try and save Charles despite how dark the world is and the state they're both in. Logan gets roped into helping Laura since this woman has been trying to get his attention, saying he can help, being as he's the most famous X-Man. Logan is extremely hesitant though. His nature wants him to help, but his logic and care for those he's already close to forces him to want to stay away. He knows if they get dragged into any kind of war, there's an incredibly slim chance of himself or Charles or Caliban will get through. But with the added proposal of money, which cements his decision because that would allow him to buy a Sunseeker and take Charles to somewhere safe, he chooses to help them. Obviously though, when Logan goes to pick up Laura and her mother to take them to North Dakota, Laura is nowhere to be seen and the mother is dead. So Logan rushes back only to find Laura hitched a ride with him unknowingly. And throughout this first act, Charles has been claiming there's another mutant, and Logan, given Charles' mental state, means he doesn't believe him, so attempts to leave without Laura to avoid any conflict. Except they become surrounded. Logan doesn't have the ability to take out these masses of mercenaries anymore. But we get this great moment where Laura comes out of the building holding one of the mercenaries' heads and revealing her own adamantium claws. The following action sequence is great. The acrobats of Laura and the different fighting style is awesome. This instantly creates such a great dynamic and sets the stage for their relationship. They're connected in so many ways. Mutants are near enough extinct, Logan's race, but they found Laura is their hope again. Evidently a mutant particularly tied to Logan himself, biologically even. I think the villains are one of the main complaints I hear about the movie, but I genuinely don't have any problem with them. I think it creates such a realistic future because that would be so possible. This is the natural evolution of humans after people like Stryker and Trask. Plus, they really aren't as much of a focus as the film is dedicated to the character of Logan, and that's fine. I think they work tonally as well. The film can be quite funny at times, but it all comes from each individual character and serves them and the wider story. It's not just quipping. As they find themselves staying over at a casino, Logan makes his way to the bar as Charles and Laura spend time in the hotel, and Logan takes this time to read some of the comics that Laura had, which happen to be X-Men comics, presenting wild stories that, from the sounds of it, are very, very loosely based on the things that the X-Men actually did. They're presented in a much more extravagant and colourful way, hence why it pisses Logan off so much, because he was there and he knows it didn't happen like this. But he finds the coordinates that Laura's mother gave him, where he's supposed to take her, obviously then casting a lot of doubt in his mind that, is this even a safe haven? Have they both just read too many comics? Now the stakes are increased because now we've got the thought, what if they get there and nothing's there? That'd be such a devastating ending. Logan is understandably pissed, but the mercenaries have arrived. So just as he's about to try and find his way through, Charles has another seizure. Logan clawing his way all the way upstairs it's so good. It's so tense and increases more and more as the sound gets louder. It really puts us in the feeling of how it would to be caught within this. It feels like it's constantly spiraling up and sounds amazing in a horrific way. We also have more mercenaries near the room, and it gets so hard to breathe by the end of the sequence. And this has been building so much that it feels like I'm holding my breath. I think I was holding my breath until Logan finally injects Charles, and I feel like I can have a sigh of relief. After leaving, they help out a nice family on the road who are having some trouble, and despite Logan's hesitance, they end up going to theirs for a meal and staying over the night. It's great for the three of them to have a meal like this, as it builds this family bond between them. Even though they're just yapping to blend in and not give themselves away, Logan and Charles are absolutely not lying either. They are the closest to family they both have, the only people they've got left, and with the introduction of Laura, they find rays of light in each other and as a trio. Obviously, this situation though goes south pretty quickly. As Logan leaves to help Will out in the fields, which leads to a good showcase of Logan's age and his experience with violence, at the same time a shaved Logan enters the bedroom and Charles, believing it to be Logan, talks about their past, whatever happened in Westview. And this scene is heartbreaking. Charles saying he can finally remember it, something he's very clearly ashamed of, and we realise Charles just hasn't been able to remember this entire time.
You wouldn't tell me? So we just kept on running away.
He couldn't remember what happened to the rest of the X-Men, and Logan had just decided not to tell him and allow him to believe that maybe it was Logan's fault. Logan bared that for Charles, and then he leans over and X-24 kills him. The music is haunting, and Laura's rage is felt amongst all of us. The fact that Charles has just opened up and finally had such an emotional moment after a nice evening. He was able to finally remember what happened to his family, essentially, and the pain that brought him and the regret. But Laura just rips into X-24 as much as she can, and Logan returns to the absolute bloodbath that has been left behind. They look face to face, and this is a window into what he would have become if he was still within the Weapon X project, if he hadn't escaped the lab. And I love the fighting style difference between Logan and X-24. There's similarities of course, but X-24 is much more streamlined. So Logan takes Charles, and his final words are the Sunseeker, and the following fight between Logan and X-24 is great, but is clear that X-24 has the upper hand in every way. It's a fight full of hatred and grief just after Charles' death and the slaughter of this family that have done nothing but good and had a real impact on our main characters. Will ends up slamming his truck into X-24, impaling him, and attempts to shoot Logan, but passes out before he can reload the gun, and there's almost an element of sadness here. Logan just lost Charles, the thing that he was kind of waiting for. He was clearly ready to accept this moment because Caliban also just died, taking himself out with grenades in an attempt to take out some of Donald and co. Now feeling there's nothing left, except there is now. There's Laura. The burial of Charles is so sad, and a great send-off to the goated Sir Patrick Stewart and this iconic character and performance. Logan passes out in a fit of rage, and Laura takes him to a doctor, where we get the hint of that it's the adamantium killing Logan, which I think works. I mean, dude literally had his skeleton, his bones, coated in fucking metal. The fact that he can heal is the reason it didn't have the poisonous effect it's had. That's why it's taken so long to have its impact. This great scene in the car is absolutely hilarious and finally leads to Logan agreeing to take Laura to North Dakota.
You can talk. What? Okay, shut up. Shut the fuck up!
Once there, we see there are actually kids already there, clearly affirming there are more mutants and maybe those coordinates are real. And we even see the kids talking to someone across the border, so it seems like maybe they are going to get the happy ending. And that night, Logan attempts to open up to Laura for the first time really, confessing that he feels like he sucks at this X-Man protecting life, that everyone he cares about around him has died, and after so many years of trying to help people, and that's still happening, why would he want to allow anyone else close to him when evidence to him shows that they'll get hurt, especially when his own days are seemingly numbered.
I never asked for this, alright? Charles never asked for this, Caliban never asked for this, and they are 6 feet under the ground. But I am not whatever it is you think I am, okay? And it is better this way. Because I suck at this. Bad shit happens to people I care about.
But this opening allows Laura to express her earned frustration with Logan throughout the movie.
Then I'll be fine.
This is their final conversation before the following day, where Logan awakes to see Laura and all the kids have left, except the mercenaries are hot on their tails. Logan takes off into the forest, and as he struggles to keep going, panting for breath, he takes the serum that was left by the kids to help him heal. But that's all the serum that they have, and it's supposed to be taken in small doses to heal over time, but he takes it all at once, which gives him a massive boost in energy, in his mutant ability, and through this, we get to see the Wolverine and that primal rage once more as he fights his way through to save Laura, and it's such a great action sequence. It's such a good final act. Brutally chopping his way through different mercenaries in an effort to get to Laura and save the rest of the kids and ensure that they cross the border to safety.
I am soaking wet right now.
It's brutal, it's bloody, it's choreographed so well. Hugh Jackman and Daphne Keane are great, especially fighting together, and the stunt doubles are absolutely nailing it. Unfortunately though, the serum starts to wear off, leaving Logan in a more wounded and vulnerable state. We end up with a standoff between Logan and Xander Rice, having a conversation about he was the one who initiated the mutant extinction and how his father worked on the Weapon X program, so Logan more than likely killed him. We see this quite funny exchange between the two, but surprisingly, Logan just... But this sends everyone into panic, and Donald unleashes X-24, where the two engage in their final fights, where Logan is getting absolutely battered. Logan holds on to these last moments of life before getting impaled on a tree, right before Laura, using the adamantium bullet, shoots X-24 in the head. I love how that's how he's killed, using the bullet Logan was considering shooting himself with and having Laura kill that alternate version of Logan, the version he would have been forced into by Stryker. His daughter is the one who kills that for good, as Logan accepts his fate. I think that's a really beautiful thing, actually. I think this is possibly the only moment of peace we've ever seen Logan have. It's such an incredible ending scene, and his words to Laura, "Don't be what they made you," are so emotional after seeing what that would be like as well. He finally understands how it feels to die and leave this world behind and move on to whatever's next. Logan is without much doubt in my mind the best comic book movie ever made, and I know it's kind of a cop-out answer to that question because it's not really a comic book movie in the normal sense anyway. So with that, the perfect ending to a character that has been on screen for 17 years, a character so intertwined with the performance, this was the perfect goodbye. And it was a goodbye. This was the final performance. We had actual finality, which is such a rare thing in not just superhero movies, in any media nowadays, any franchise. How often is it we see a character that we care about die and don't come back, you know? And that's what makes it special, because that's real. When we lose people, they don't come back, and I know that these are films and stories and characters and you know, but nonetheless, I think it's important, and what makes the art so powerful to have that impact, and I think Logan truly does. And don't get me wrong, you can have characters return from like a departure or a death or something, and you can do that in effective ways, don't get me wrong, but it's when it's an oversaturated thing that it becomes a problem, and that's why it's a problem now, I think. I mean, we saw it in the MCU, and the only reason I feel like that conversation has stopped is because Cap and Iron Man died, and they've not come back and don't seem to be coming back anytime soon, although Secret Wars could fucking do anything. And so the fact that this character had stayed dead, Logan, made the impact of the film so much stronger. And I'm not saying the ending of Logan is now bad, it's still pitch perfect in execution to me, but can we ever feel the exact same if Hugh Jackman has now at least once portrayed another variation of the character?
You were an X-Man. You were the X-Man.
I am incredibly excited for Deadpool and Wolverine, don't get me wrong. I'm hoping to see it in IMAX, but Hugh Jackman is so integral to this on-screen portrayal of Logan that now, the fact we know we get to see him at least once more, that impact is questioned. Can I really feel that same emotion on a Logan rewatch now? Although it may sound it, I'm not entirely against bringing Hugh Jackman as Wolverine back. We are already getting something somewhat different. It seems to be an alternate variant of the character. We are getting the iconic suit, and I think Deadpool is maybe the only movie that could get away with this. Deadpool feels like quite a vital movie right now, especially for Marvel, but it's Deadpool under mostly entirely new creatives, crossing over with the beloved MCU and bringing back the iconic Wolverine. It's impossible to say before the movie releases realistically, of course it is. We have no way of knowing how this movie approaches the finality of Logan, or if it will at all. We know Ryan Reynolds said they're not touching Logan, but I think that's kind of easier said than done when it's as intertwined as it is, when it's as good as it is. The reason I'm so worried is the reliance that this kind of thing has become in recent years. The expectation that all the audience needs is some old characters that we liked before and we'll be handing over our wallets, which has proved kind of successful, which is scary, because that's not the direction we want to go in. It's an annoying trend that hopefully doesn't stick around for too much longer, but that's kind of the age of social media, and when unique and original content is so almost scarce feeling at times. The big thing here though, for me, is Disney. The mouse that's playing Monopoly with the film industry, swallowing whatever it can, and the fact that these characters are coming over from Fox and Disney's first move was to bring Hugh Jackman back, is hopefully not a sign of their approach. I mean, it's tweets like this where we see people hyping up the cameos and like, can we talk about the actual film though? Like, don't get me wrong, the cameos are fun. They are. I'm actually someone who thinks the cameos in Doctor Strange 2 work, mostly. But the fact that this movie is seemingly going to be killing off the Fox universe in some way. I mean, we see the actual Fox logo in the background, in ruins, which I think is a cool idea. I really like that, and I remember seeing the set photos and thinking, holy shit. But, as I say, it's Disney, so I'm scared, because it could so easily become disrespectful, and then the impact of Logan and that finality and that preservation is questioned, I think. Obviously though, this is all more theorizing than anything, based off Disney's approach to their content. I mean, they've let us have the full R-rated version of the movie, so maybe they've been allowed to cook up an X-Men fans all-you-can-eat buffet. There is every chance they do something emotionally effective and interesting with the character, and if there is as much of him as the title would suggest, being the co-lead as much as Deadpool, and from what we have seen in the marketing, I am feeling positive about how they're going to handle it. But I think it's immediately got that fatal flaw of being in the world where we are now, where everything feels so derivative, particularly in the superhero space. Bringing old things back that are remembered fondly for an easy positive rating, and that is the absolute worst case scenario for this film. As I say, we might be safe. The brief moments we've seen of the character give me more vibes of X-Men 97 Wolverine than anything else. Much more animalistic and less of the tragic, trauma-ridden hero. There is just a different vibe to Hugh's performance this time around, but only time will tell, and we can only hope.